I specialize in the art of orgasm. I am a clinical sexologist, so I travel the country talking to folks on various platforms about the benefits of orgasm. And then I have a sexual wellness center here in Columbus, Ohio, where I deliver workshops on creating orgasms through pleasure and through erroneous zones that were not taught to use for our own sexual pleasure. So that's pretty much what I do in a nutshell.
You specialize in understanding orgasms and their benefits. And I think everyone in general knows one of the main benefits of an orgasm is pleasure. But what are some of the other benefits that we may not be aware of?
Oh, there are so many. The actual process of having the orgasm causes certain components of our body to swell and create chemicals and hormones that really help us. And at the peak of orgasm, the hormones serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin work together to give us this orgasmic experience that can be as intense as you created. This helps lower the blood pressure and cortisol levels, which are great for the body. Of course, it changes your mood. You can't be very upset in that process. So it literally shifts your mood to the point where some of us consider it an antidepressant. It's an antihistamine. There are so many benefits that orgasms help within our body that we can truly use for whole body wellness if we can incorporate them into our daily care.
Oh, wow. I like how you said that, our daily care. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if there is a way that every day you can naturally make almost like this cocktail of really helpful hormones within your body, of course, that's something that we should be doing. I know some people can trigger those hormones to come during yoga or meditation. And it's interesting to hear that we also experience that during an orgasm, which makes sense. All of those things can lead us to feeling like this bliss-like feeling.
Right, exactly,
And
exactly.
so it's nice to hear scientifically it's because of these hormones coming together and really just nourishing the body and mind, it sounds like.
Really? Yes, yes, indeed. It really does.
I'd like to hear your thoughts because, at Life Jasmine, we have a lot of members that, our platform and our members tend to be more relationship based. So it seems like they tend to find models or one particular model that they really enjoy, and they almost develop this parasocial relationship with them where it's deeper than just the sexual. Like they talk about their daily lives, they talk about everything together. In fact, the Kinsey Institute did a study and said that the models who have the longest call times and make the most money are talking about the least explicit things because they have this relationship that's developed. But needless to say, it's probably the sexuality that brings members in and gets them in the door. And it's interesting to hear, this daily act of having an orgasm has so many health benefits. It makes sense why there are so many businessmen or men that lead stressful lives or women that lead stressful lives that like having this outlet for the site.
Right.
And yet there's so much stigma.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's been the unfortunate part because in teaching and passing on that message of sex is just about procreating, it wasn't even, it's like 1953, which, wasn't that long ago, that they recognized that vulva owners do have orgasms and we do have contractions in our uterus that cause pleasure and our pelvic floor shifts. And all those things are happening during orgasm. The Kinsley Institute is doing a lot of research on that right now, and so is Womanizer and the pleasure part of the sex. If you are going to be doing this, let's talk about the pleasure. So let's talk about the 8 vulva orgasms that you can have. There's not a lot of places that you can get this kind of information. But to your point with the camming, I talk to my friends and I'm always like, well, you got to be a little bit of a therapist or a little bit of like a support system for this person, because, you've got disabled sexuals who could be, just soaking in whatever the conversation is to the point where it's releasing the same type of hormones, which is going to cause that relaxed. I feel great. I feel comfortable in this conversation. So now we're talking about my dog or we're getting my car fixed and those kind of things because that's just connection, which we definitely need. And it's different than watching porn and masturbating. When you're connecting with the cam individual, even if there's masturbation or whatever it is that's happening, you're actually connecting to a specific individual that's not acting or behaving in a certain way. This person is with you through this process that you're creating sexually. Mm-hmm.
It's so true. I feel like even in my own life, the older I get and the more I understand, I feel like connection is a core value, and not just core value, but it's such a primal need for all of us. And we don't recognize that. And I think it's the driving factor behind so much of our behavior, like a lot of the men, I've interviewed so many of Live Jasmine's members, and a lot of them have, just recently gone through a really bad divorce. And so they're not really interested in dating traditionally, but they're still needing connection,
Right, right,
Or some members, they have a disability that prevents them from even being able to leave the house very often. So
exactly.
certainly they're not able to have a really robust social life in the
Right,
traditional sense, but they still need
right.
connection.
And they're still sexual beings.
And
Yes,
they're still
exactly.
sexual beings. And that's
Yeah,
the thing, is like, that's what I'm realizing more and more, is how deeply we need connection. And it seems like our sexuality is the way that it's the driving energy behind connecting with others, even if it's not intercourse,
right,
it's still sexual in nature.
right.
We're
Mm-hmm.
having to seduce people to be our friends or to like us or whatever it is.
Exactly, exactly. So, and it's really interesting because for me, the arousal is the ingredient for the orgasm. If you don't warm the engine up, it's going to be hard to really tug out through that experience. But that time that we're spending with arousal is very, very important. And it happens in all of our relationships, like you said, but from very different components. It's like when you go to the gynecologist, during that pelvic exam, you're not going to have an orgasm. And that's because the body is not aroused in that way. So it's not going to respond in that way. So with friendships and stuff, where we might be turned on by the fact that we're connecting with this person and we can go to the movies and we can do this and we can do that, it's a non-sexual way. But that contact, that communication and that need is very, very important. And to your point, there are certain scenarios where folks don't have access to face-to-face kind of conversation. So camming, again, on like porn, is such a great vehicle for them to be able to use to have that human connection, which is innate in us. We're born with the need for it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you you mentioned a phrase earlier that I really like, which is that, we're all still sexual beings, but unfortunately, right now, it seems like we live in a society where we have to hide that unless it is, again, in a way that is part of what society accepts as
Exactly.
the right way to be sexual. How
Exactly.
do we start moving forward from that? Like, I feel like for so many people, they don't even get to truly explore themselves or know themselves sexually because they're told instantly it's wrong. So it's like,
Right.
if they do start, let's say, going to Live Jasmine and connecting with the model, they may have some shame or guilt about that that's going to prevent them from really diving into that. Um, how do we take back our power, so to speak, in this place and own our sexuality, explore our sexuality when there is so much pressure from society to not?
Right. Right. That's a really good question. And I think that separates me as my niche as a sexologist because I provide experiences for individuals to be able to explore themselves. But all of my sessions have to start with them stepping away from that generational conversation that sex is bad. So at Shade's Oasis, we are open to all humans looking to have a human experience. So my goal is orgasm, of course, being able to be okay with exploring sexuality, whether it be a little bit of BDSM, whether it be, a polyamory relationship. All of that starts with getting over that generational conversation that this is bad and taboo and the stigmas of all that stuff that comes along with exploring your sexuality.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. So basically what you do at your center, it sounds like, is you put them in an environment where they're encouraged to go deeper and explore their sexuality more.
Exactly, exactly. That's exactly what we do. Creating a space where people are able to say, well, I didn't like this, but I did like that, is very important when you're given permission to go ahead and explore yourself. Try something. If it doesn't work, then try something else. I try a model. If it doesn't work for you, try another model. But there's so much out there for every specific thing that you can do sexually. Having that dopamine feeling is very addictive, but it could also be a motivator for having sexual wellness in a good, positive way.
From your perspective, what pros and cons do you see from, the industry of camming?
Mhm. Pros for me is from the educational perspective because there's so many different components of camming that if you don't know what something is, you can find a model who will help you figure it out. And so that's great. Folks who are afraid to connect with a therapist like me, or somebody who really talks about or ask a cousin about it, can get that information through camming. So there's a pro because it's an outlet for sexual information to help folks be able to experience pleasure, connectivity, that kind of thing. But there is a con. There you can get addicted to it. You can spend all your time online, and if you can establish this deep relationship with this one person, that you could start to believe you're truly in this relationship with this person, and this is coming home from work and meeting out with your wife type thing. So there's that balance that has to exist where folks know that in real life, this is what you need to do to be responsible about watching and participating in these kind of things. So where I don't see a con being, like I don't see a lot of cons to it because it has the ability to help those who are disabled. It has those abilities for folks who just don't have social skills, and being able to start conversations and being able to do it in real life is great. I mean, I just think hands-on is just more important to maintain the experience and say, give you that energy to go try something else or do something different or log back on. I just think that has a lot of power. And it's so innate in us. We are born to have this process and this connectivity and needing each other in this way. And from the beginning, we're told, stay away, keep yourself separate, protect yourself, don't do this and don't do that.
What are our next steps in creating a more sex positive society?
Right. It's exciting that there are sex expos and conferences that are happening all over the world that folks can get to. My issue with them is cost. A lot of folks really, depending on what the cost is, as far as getting the public into these places where they can get this education from experts from all over the world, that they can have access to toys of any sort, and just be free because you're in a room full of other folks who are looking at the same stuff, to be able to do that. So I really think the next step is to open doors in more places, like even churches, even in the school, to be able to have modern day sex education. I think, which includes that component of pleasure. I think that would be our next step, is to make moves toward sharing the word on bigger platforms.
Mm-hmm. We got to de-shame this society.
Indeed,
Amen.
indeed, really.
Thank you so much. This
You're
is
so welcome.
you. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed having you. I appreciate you giving us your time today. I
Mhm.
think conversations like this are just really key in moving things forward and people understanding that it's okay for them to be sexual. It's okay for them to explore that sexuality. I think like there's a really old rule, harm to none, and it's fine, basically. That's it. The only rule is harm to none.
Right,
If you're
right.
not causing harm, you have full permission to explore.
I like that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You take